Good day to our viewers and welcome to another episode of the eThekwini Matters podcast about Heritage Month. My name is Silindile Cele and I will be your host for this episode. The mandate of the Parks, Recreation and Culture Unit is to create a city where people interact creatively to stimulate economic growth, learning, sustainability, social cohesion and unity. To achieve this, the unit has various departments working to deliver integrated environmental, cultural, heritage and leisure services in the municipality. To citizens of the diverse city, September is an important month in the national calendar. In commemorating heritage, we affirm our identity, and it is also a symbol of increased community pride, values, and greater social cohesion through numerous activities and celebrations. Cultural heritage plays an important role in national building, and it is also a resource for every person, as it is the anchor to our roots and it defines who we are. Joining us in studio today, we have the PRC Deputy Head, Mr. Ernest Shozi, who will tell us more about activities planned for heritage celebrations around the city. Welcome to our studios, Baba. Sibonga kakhulu ukuthi sibe nawe namhlanje for you to tell us more about Heritage Month and our celebrations as a city.
Thank you.
I guess Baba, can you please tell us more about PRC? When we talk about PRC as a unit, sikhuluma ngani?
Thank you so much. PRC is the most important unity, business unity within the city. Mm-hmm. It is a business unity that look at a holistic development of our citizens. Mm-hmm. We look, for an example, on educational, cultural activities and the development of arts culture. And above that, we also provide infrastructure that is much needed in communities that are historically disadvantaged. Mm-hmm. For example, we provide library services in areas like Amaoti, Echelimnyama, and then in the deep rural areas as well. Above that, we also inculcate a culture of reading and writing in the city through One City, One Book. Mm-hmm. As you may be aware, we were designated by United Nations, UNESCO, as a city of literature.
Yes.
So part of that, we educate, train people to write books. Mm-hmm. And then once that is done, we convene a signature program, what we call it Articulate Africa, where we celebrate the writers and we also unveil the books that are written by different writers. Mm-hmm. Beside that, as a business unit, you might be aware as well that we are responsible for cemeteries. So we provide that service to the community. Mm-hmm. We also provide parks for the public to access. We're also responsible for the coastal side, the beaches. If there's anything that happened there, is also will take care of that situation. Mm-hmm. We also provide as well the lifeguard service as well as a unity. That when tourists come to the beach, we look after their safe. Where that business unity that look at a holistic development of a human being into a total person. We conduct research through our Natural Science Museum and then the local history museum. Yeah. So we conduct research on a diverse range of areas.
Please tell us about the significance of cultural heritage.
Now, cultural heritage is important in a sense that it tells us as a nation who are we, where do we come from, why we should be proud about our history. For example, there are backlists that the great kings of our nation, King Cetshwayo, King Shaka, Sekhukhune, Makanda, that they fought against the colonizers. So the best way to educate society is to preserve that history in the first instance and be able to take the future generation about our culture, our history, our heritage, so that we can preserve and be proud of it. So it's also educational in a sense that learners at an early age, you need to tell them where we come from as a country, as a nation, and as a people. So we provide that. But it is important also for advancement of knowledge and research to understand all these matters, where we come from. If you look, for an example, when His Majesty the King was coronated last year, it was historic in that many people have never been part of the coronation of the King. It's something that all of us as a nation were proud about it as part of our heritage. And most of us were dressed in traditional gear.
Yes.
And we felt very proud of ourselves as a nation.
And as a unit, what is the mandate for cultural heritage? Can you just tell us about programs?
Oh, yes, yeah. No, in terms of the mandate, as I indicated, in the first instance is a preservation, that we need to preserve history and heritage in the city. You look around the city, Kwamuhle Museum, for an example, and the statues that you will see around the cities. You may say some of them, or most of them, are colonialist, but happily, in no time, we'll be unveiling statues of some of our great leaders. I will not tell you the details because I will leave that to the leadership of the city to unveil. So it's part of our mandate. And then also, if you look at Katomena Museum, for an example, is a project that seeks to change the landscape of the city, so that you don't just see buildings, but you also see things that have a significance that a community can associate themselves with.
Cultural heritage plays an important role in nation building. It is, in fact, an anchor to our roots. Can you tell us more about that?
Oh, yes. Let's start with our symbols because they're important. If you look at the coat of arms, is written in Khoi language, which is called Ika Ikareke. In simply English, it means diverse people unite. So it is an important thing that happened in the country, because before we didn't have a motto that united us as a nation. If I were just to give you a brief background how the coat of arms came about, in the early 1994, 96, there was a debate within government what sort of symbols that will unite the nation, that will need to be a rallying point that everybody can identify themselves with. And as you know, initially we had about 11 languages, but there was a question that President Mbeki and the late Minister had posed to us as officials, that if we choose a particular language, are we not going to have another group saying, why not our language?
Yes,
so we opted for the Khoi language, which are the original people, by the way, of South Africa. So we look at the archives, which are housed at UCT, and then the professors interpreted for us, and then they sent to the presidency, and then that is why we now have that coat of arms. So is an important symbol for people to understand that as a nation we're a diverse people, and then therefore we should be proud of our diversity and celebrate it. It's not something that divides us, but it's something that unites us. That all of us, the Ndebeles, the Zulus, the Xhosas, Amampondo, we should celebrate our cultural diversity. And then in the city of eThekwini is also very important because you also have a larger portion of the Indian community that we must also celebrate their culture. They are also part of us.
The city has an abundance of cultural resources. Now, as a unit, how do you guys ensure that we preserve this kind of resources. And I see there's an element of tourism in it. How do we then use these resources to boost tourism and also economic benefits?
Yes, as I indicated that we anchor what our colleagues from the tourism department do. We are responsible in terms of our mandate for the preservation. I'm sorry I didn't indicate this one. We are also digitizing the history so that these things don't get lost. We are moving away of keeping things in papers. We are now digitizing them so that people can also access them digitally. So we're preserving the history for future generation to be able to use it. Yes.
So if it's preserved digitally, will it be able to be accessed via the internet?
Yes. In fact, at some point, I think it was 2006, there was a unit within the Department of Communications and Digital Technology called the Presidential Information Society and Development. Well, then President Mbeki he commissioned a study across the country for us to be able to digitize all our history and heritage. So it plays an important role in terms of understanding but also ensuring that these things, they don't get lost. Because there are many people who may not know certain things within the city, but now we're able to access those ones digital.
Okay. Could you share with us the role and importance of cultural heritage in social cohesion?
Oh yes, social cohesion is an important pillar for us as a nation. Maybe for the viewers, let's define what we mean about social cohesion. For us as PRC, social cohesion deals with the solidarity with the poor. It's something that has to unite all of us as a nation. That those that are not better off, we need to look after them. And then all of us as a nation, we must come together and see things in the same way, to say, as a people, what is it that unite us? There's a say in isiZulu, it's called ubuntu, or umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. You are because we are. Yes. We are because you are. So the spirit of Ubuntu is something that needs to be encouraged through social cohesion. And then it's important as well in the context of nation building and reconciliation, because as I said earlier on, we got a history where we come from as a country. So it's important that we promote reconciliation and nation building through social cohesion, where we engage communities on different topics. Some of them very difficult. For an example, what happened in 1947 between Africans and Indians is something that as a country we don't need to hide about it, but we need to talk about it and say what happened at the time, and where are we as a nation. What is it that we can learn from that experience? If you look at the riot as well in 2022, in some of the areas, it started to create racial tension. Yes, so it's important that we keep the flag of social cohesion as an ongoing project, not something that we do it as an event, but as an ongoing thing that we must always talk about and do something about it.
Yeah. So what kind of activities does the unit use to unite communities, to ensure that we promote social cohesion amongst our residents in eThekwini?
We organize the engagement with different stakeholders. We also invite people from diverse background to address different audiences. We will, for example, invite business people to talk about what is the value of the artifacts? You will be shocked that some of our artifacts that we may have bought them for, say, 5 million. Today they are worth 20 million. So we invite people like Vivian Reddy to talk about why in his residence he has so much of this artifact. So he's able to explain that these things are important. It's not just imihlobiso, but they got a value into it. Besides that, we also talk about social cohesion, as I said, and then engage people in different topics. We'll invite sport people also to talk about the role of sport in uniting the nation. We also discuss difficult issues like the issue of lesbian and gays. We put on the table this issue so that we don't hide it. We do this precisely because our constitutions allow this thing, the people to have a choice of living. So we do those kind of engagement. So it's part of the things that we do as part of social cohesion. So it is up to the individual to choose whether you want to live this life or we want to live that life. But we can't be prescriptive to society that, no, this is a way only, nothing else. Yes.
How has modern technology impacted on cultural heritage, and how can we use modern technology to advance history, heritage and culture? I know you did speak about the digitalization of information related to heritage of eThekwini. Are there any more programs?
Oh yes, I mean, if you look at music, for an example, it is no longer like in an old way. Now music is recorded, so it's part of the technological advancement,
yes,
and scientific development. As a unity, we are very much part of the fourth industrial revolution, and we endorse it. Earlier on, as I spoke about digitization. Digitization is precisely addressing the question of how do we see technology and how do we use it to advance culture, to advance heritage, and also to use for research and development.
National Heritage Day is being held here in eThekwini. Yes. How is that going to benefit us as a city?
Oh yes, from a tourism point of view, there is a national heritage day. That people are coming all over the country. They will be in the city. From an accommodation point of view, I hope all the hotels, they will be fully booked. Also, people, they like to visit areas like Umlazi, Kwamashu. Yes, the function will be in Kwamashu. So it has all those spin-offs that people will benefit from it. They will go to Shisanyama, as I said. There are also places in the city that people want to go and relax and enjoy themselves, socialize. So from that perspective, I think it's going to be good for the city. It will also demonstrate our ability as a city to host big events.
Yes. And in closing, what would you say to the public about preserving our heritage and our culture?
I think it's important for us, in the first instance, as a nation, to be proud of who we are and where we come from, so that we can be able to share with the future generation good and the bad stories of where we come from. We don't need to tell them a sugar-coated history that this didn't happen, this it happened. We have leaders who pay the supreme sacrifice for where we are as a country. So we should not forget that. Then we should then be able to educate people that in South Africa we're not fighting against a racial group, but we're fighting against the system. As you might be aware, the system of apartheid was declared by international community as a crime against humanity. So in celebrating our heritage, we should then be able to say to people, this was a system that was declared a crime against humanity, and then now as a country we are moving forward, we are building a non-racial, non-sexist and democratic society. So everybody should embrace that in our diversity and see all of us as a people and as a nation. And then more importantly, on the sporting side, Amapogopo are playing on Saturday.
Yes.
So we will be celebrating heritage, but I think it will be important that we prepare our brides and everything and encourage people not to start drinking earlier. They must start doing their things after the game. And I'm certain it's a game that we will win to close the Heritage Month on a high note.
And sport is a uniter
It's
as
a
well.
uniter, yes. It unites the nation, yes.
Thank you so much, Bab Shozi, for coming to our studios and give us more information about PRC and this important month, being a Heritage Month.
You're welcome.
We've come to the end of today's podcast. Please don't forget to like and subscribe across our social media pages, and please don't forget to join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m.